Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my pickup truck. Now, the fact that I'm coming to you live from the cab of my GMC pickup truck tells you two important things. First off, it tells you that the information that I'm about to relay to you is A, critically important, B, absolutely true, and C, so secret that I had to sit in the cab of my pickup truck to even talk to you about it. And second, I am probably in the cab of my pickup truck in order to make a quick getaway if I am confronted by the authorities who do not want me to divulge the information that I'm about to relay to you. Because they do not want you to know the truth, and the truth is that the world is divided into two camps. The people who correctly assert that the code review is an absolutely essential part of any quality software development process, versus the lamestream sheeple who say that the code review has become an outmoded waste of time. I will give you my completely objective opinion on which of these is dangerous and foolhardy talk.
Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. I'm Dave Plummer, a retired software engineer from Microsoft, going back to the MS-DOS and Windows 95 days. And today, I'm going to make the case for the code review and fill you in on precisely how we did them at Microsoft back in the golden days. First, I'll give you the top 5 reasons you should still be doing them today, no matter how agile and flexible you think you may be. Then I'll give you the anti-patterns, the top 5 things you absolutely should not be doing in your code reviews. And then stay tuned for a little bit of late-breaking info from the pickup truck at the end. Before I get underway, I'd like to ask you to check your subscription status. Of course, if you're not already a subscriber, I'd be honored if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. But my concern is with people that actually thought they were subscribed. There's something going on with YouTube where they scrub subs, and a number of people reported that they got unsubscribed somehow and weren't sure how. So please just take a quick look at the button and make sure it says subscribed. If it's still red and says subscribe, give it a click. Otherwise, who knows what kind of gold you're going to be missing. Woo! But back to code reviews. A lot of things that we did at Microsoft in the 80s and 90s would be considered outdated at best by today's standards. For example, long before Git or Subversion or Source Depot, we used a system called Slime for Source Library Manager. It was even released as a product called Microsoft Delta at one point. How slimy was it? Well, it was a source code manager that didn't support branches or forks, so pretty slimy. I mean, it was great for its day, but it was really more of a wrapper over diff, and times have changed. Some are even saying that about the code review itself. And yet, even with many of the processes and procedures that we followed back then likely being outmoded today, I believe the code review itself was the single most important thing we did. And not simply just because we did it, but because we did it the right way. And today, I'm going to tell you not only why the code review is so important, but also how to do it old school and yet updated for a post-COVID world. By the way, the idea for doing a code review episode was originally suggested long ago in a video comment by Ben Bradbury, so thanks to Ben for the idea. And thanks to David Sobeski, a former exec at Microsoft, who prodded me into finally getting around to making it. As always, if you do have suggestions for a video topic, please post them in the comments and let me know. It was in talking to David that I learned that many companies, and even groups within Microsoft today, have eschewed the code review for what they perceive as faster, more agile development. Bugs will be found by the beta users, I guess. He argues, and I agree, that this is misguided, that the purpose and point of the code review has evolved and changed over the years. Today, his focus is less on scrutinizing individual lines of code and more on assessing the performance, efficiency, and identifying issues like cross-team and cross-group dependencies. So let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What exactly is a code review and why should you be doing them? Put most simply, a code review is a peer review of any changes that you plan to make to your source code tree. You get someone of comparable skill and knowledge and you sit down with them, at one time in person, but more likely virtually today, and your peer reviews your code literally line by line. Not skimming page by page, but scrutinizing line by line. In the olden days, a reviewer might go so far as to take a pencil and paper and track register contents as they went, but today the purpose is to track key state as you mentally walk that state through the code changes. The reviewer is acting as something of a supercompiler and a processor at the same time, interpreting and working through the code at a level of detail sufficient to allow them to track the application state. Branches must be both taken and not taken, and error paths and edge cases inspected carefully. The level of detail should not depend on the volume of code that has to be gone through. It's been established that the proper speed for a code review is about 200 to 400 lines of code per hour. So that's about 6 pages per hour, about 10 minutes per page. That feels about right for actual programming logic. Now, if you were reviewing safety-critical embedded software, you might be much slower, and if you were just skimming user interface metadata, you may be much faster, but it's been shown that going much faster than required may be too fast to actually find any serious errors. You want your code reviewer to be a devil's advocate of some sort, but not an actual adversary. I like to have my reviews done by someone with deep knowledge in the area that I was touching, and ideally it'd be somebody smarter than me or senior to me so that I could learn something at the same time. Now, a lot of the time it was a guy named Bob who is what I like to call the smartest guy down the hall at any given time. And that's who I like to have my code reviews done by. Bob Day, Raymond Chen, Brian Ost. Guys like that would never allow themselves to look past anything, and in return, you'd better have your code in good order before you get there. But if you do, then you're in for a wildly educational ride. A good code review could be like a college tutoring session from your technical hero, and next to watching them debug code live, a code review was the best way to learn. Under the leadership of new CEO Satya Nadella, Microsoft has become a much kinder and gentler place, even for those who have stayed with it over the long haul. And since it's also wildly profitable, nobody's complaining, because if you can achieve the same results without the brutality, all the better. In the old days, there was an overarching fear that you might do something stupid like break the build. It's so easy to do. I mean, a header file gets picked up from a different include path on your machine and hence it compiles for you but not the build lab, for example. Instant build break. The chief architect of Windows NT was Dave Cutler. Cutler is one of those guys who, let's just say, doesn't suffer fools gladly. And it was said that if you broke the build at an inopportune time, Dave C. would walk through your wall. Now, Dave looks like a 1960s astronaut and had the compact muscular frame of one too, so maybe he did take a lot of drywall shortcuts. I don't rightly know. One time, we were preparing to do a code review for a new hire named Sean that worked for me, and so Sean started a code sync right before we left for lunch. A sync just pulls the newest source code down from the server to merge it with your own code. What Sean didn't know, nor did I yet, was that a sync could actually obtain a lock on the server in some cases. So when his sync hit a prompt and needed a yes-no decision, it just sat there holding a lock over the entire NT source tree. Nobody else could do a thing with it for the entire hour. And Dave C. didn't take a lunch break that day. When we got back from ours, we could hear a phone ringing down the entire hallway. Oh, no. It was Sean's, and it could have been ringing for several minutes for all we knew. When we finally got to his office, we all saw the jam sync operation on the console and then Dave C.'s name on the phone's caller ID. Sean looked at me a little terrified. Dave C. was infamous even to the new guys. We told him he had to answer it, and when he did, Dave's voice came roaring over the handset. Release your f***ing lock! Okay, now back to the topic itself, code reviews. What's the purpose of a code review, and why should your team be doing them? Here are the top 5 reasons that I promised you. Number 1, to find defects. The additional scrutiny of a fellow developer is ultimately intended to find any remaining bugs in your code before you check them into the main source tree. It's just way easier and more efficient to find bugs in a quick inspection pass than it is to rely on an after-the-fact test apparatus to find, debug, assign, correct, and retest bugs after you've introduced them. Defects come in multiple forms, however. Not all are as simple as an off-by-one error walking an array. You want to find not only problems with correctness, but also performance, security, backwards compatibility, and so on. Having someone with a different mental toolbox review your code can go a long way because there's a certain diversity of experience being brought to the problem. Security is an example where code can look entirely fine and even be technically correct, but be seriously broken at the same time. Any code that runs on the machine perimeter or with elevation must be carefully inspected by someone who's familiar with the issues surrounding it. This is all the more important if you're weak in a particular area like security or graphics or parsing or whatever. Find the local expert and let them do your review. Don't be shy. I know the instinct is not to expose yourself to that kind of scrutiny, but it's good for the soul and the code base. Beyond simple defects is number 2, code quality. But what's the difference? Well, bugs and defects are cases where the code doesn't do what it was supposed to do. But even when performing correctly, there are many other dimensions to code quality, such as maintainability, readability, uniformity, understandability, and so on. Your team should have a style guide and everyone should follow it. For things that you do not have a style guide for, you should follow the precedent of any existing code. If someone wants to change that precedent, they should first get buy-off from the team, then fix all existing instances, and then proceed. You certainly don't want to mix and match styles within a project. All that said, the last thing you want a code review to devolve into is a religious war over tabs and spaces, bracing style, argument casing, and so on. All of those things should have a right and a wrong answer, and everyone should agree and just follow them. The code to be reviewed should have had all those issues addressed long before the code review. Next, we have number 3, knowledge transfer. I learned more in code reviews at Microsoft than practically anywhere else. Remember at the time, at least very early on, there was no web to speak of, no Stack Overflow or GitHub or any of that. It's hard to actually believe I got a degree in computer science before you could search the web. You could either read it in a book, figure it out yourself, or see it done in someone else's code. Those are really your 3 vectors for new information. Well, there was Gopher and Archie, but But beyond just learning in general, there are several specific types of knowledge transfer that are afforded by the code review. First and foremost is that on a larger project, it enables new developers to learn the codebase. Assuming everyone writes about the same amount of code, you'd be familiar with twice as much if you review someone else's code at the same rate that you write code. One of the things that surprised me the most when I first started on the MS-DOS team was that there was no shared library of utility code. If you couldn't do it through an existing int21 into the MS-DOS dispatch table, then it didn't exist. If you wanted to do something as fundamental as just to output a decimal number, you had to write your own code to convert it to base 10. I could only imagine how many times stuff like that had been duplicated and redone over and over and over, and how often subtle bugs were introduced. If you do have code libraries that your team uses, however, seeing other people use them effectively is a great way to learn them, and sometimes a code review around consuming a library is like getting a personal tutorial on the subject. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then an example can be worth 1,000,000. Knowledge transfer also extends to common solutions that your team uses and to learn the standards that are hopefully set out in your style guide. But there are a lot of undocumented style points that might simply be conventions like air handling and how it's done in your particular project. Seeing it in action is likely a lot faster and more accurate than learning it from a document. At number 4, we have mutual responsibility. There's a lot to be said for collective code ownership and in treating your codebase as a precious ecology that must be preserved and protected. Just as you wouldn't pour a bucket of motor oil into a local stream, nor would you introduce a similar digital detritus into your codebase. People tend to look after things that are theirs. When people feel like they have ownership and authorship of the code, I believe they tend to look after it better. And the code review is the perfect opportunity for everyone to play forest ranger and limit what is allowed to come into the codebase and what is allowed to stay. I've never actually worked at a place for long where I didn't have a sense of code ownership, but if it were the case, I can imagine there could be a sense of washing your hands of responsibility of your code once it was checked into the main tree, as if it were now someone else's problem. To help combat this, being the code reviewer for a piece of code means that you were the gatekeeper, and it was you who let it in. As the responsible party, you are the one who owns its ultimate success or failure in the product as much as the code's author. In fact, at Microsoft, once a check-in was made, we'd send sync and build instructions to the NT-dev alias, and it would then be signed off by both the author of the code and the code reviewer. Oftentimes, I took greater solace in a change based more on who reviewed the code than on who wrote it in the first place. I always felt like the Windows code that I wrote was my own. I mean, it was clearly 100% the property of Microsoft Corporation, I get that. But I'm fortunate to have worked on a number of components where my code has lived on for 25 or more years and will likely exist for as long as Windows compatibility remains a thing. I'm proud of that, and the only way to feel that way is because of the sense of ownership that I have over that code, especially of the components that I was directly responsible for. In fact, we never said who's responsible for X. We'd always say who owns that. It's a minor thing, but I think code reviews can also build a sense of solidarity in a project. By conforming to shared standards and practices, and by giving everyone a role in maintaining and enforcing them, you give everyone a direct and essential role in the product's success. It's as close to wearing a uniform as most developers will ever get. And finally, Item 5. Miscellaneous. Here in this final bucket, I'll simply place all the other benefits of code reviews, of which there are many, things like generating new ideas and patents, or generating new ideas for products and solutions that transcend the specific code being reviewed. In a way, it gives you the best of the co-programming paradigm, where two programmers are assigned to work together over each other's shoulders. I guess in the formal version, one holds up the printout from Stack Overflow, and the other one types it in. Thanks, I'm here all week. In reality, I think the code review allows you to reap many of the collaborative and quality benefits of co-programming when it's most useful, and then people can go back to working independently and each can write code productively on their own until it's time to collaborate on its finalization again, where more eyes are better. You might also have goals specific to your company, such as conforming to ISO or other standards in industrial management systems. The code review might be the best, if not the only place to perform some of those functions. Okay, with the benefits and best practices nicely summarized, we should look at some of the anti-patterns. The top 5 things you should absolutely not be doing in a code review. Number 1, no nitpicking. Now, this requires cooperation on both sides. The person writing code must accept that there is a style guide and that personal expression is best left to performance artists, and that issues surrounding tabs, spaces, braces, capitalization, and so on have long since been worked out collectively as a team. They need to own bringing their code up to snuff with respect to that style guide, and that needs to happen before the code review. And if there's a ton of stuff that needs to be fixed and cannot be overlooked far enough to continue with the actual code review, it should be tabled until the style issues are resolved. The code review is not the appropriate venue or opportunity to debate the style guide. Number 2, ping pong. One of the last things you want would be an iterative code review that you need to keep coming back for. A code review should be a single pass, or 2 at most if there were actual issues that needed to go back to the drawing board for revision. But if you find yourself in a situation where the reviewer sends the same code back several times, something needs to be done soon, as that's an incredibly demotivating process and indicates a lack of something, be it communication or acceptance or whatever. But if it takes multiple passes to get it right, then someone isn't paying attention. For an excellent story of ping pong in action at Microsoft, check out my book in the video description, which contains a notoriously frustrating example from my own career. Number 3, inconsistency. While no two reviewers are ever going to be the same, they should be as similar as possible. If one code reviewer focuses on performance to the exclusion of all else, while another is concerned only with robustness, then you're not getting good code coverage from either of them, really. This can happen when your team does not have established best standards and practices for everyone to shoot for. The more crisply defined those standards and practices are, the more consistency you can achieve between reviews. You would never want to do it literally, but every code review comment or change request should stem from material breach of those policies. And they can't be too general, like, don't check bugs in, but they can't be so specific that nobody ever read it. It's a delicate balance, and perhaps best pursued as if you were writing a tutorial and not a legal document. Number 4, design changes at review time. We all know this one. Some smartass waits until you've actually written the code to tell you how you should have designed it in the first place, but didn't. And it doesn't matter if they're wrong or right about the premise, because a code review is neither the right time nor the right place to be designing the product. Likely, that should have taken place days, weeks, or even longer ago. Waiting until code review to voice design concerns is counterproductive for everyone involved. What if, however, the reviewer is right? Well, all you can really do at that point is look hard at the way you're doing things that allows bad designs to make it that far into production. Something needs to change upstream in the process to make sure that the bad design isn't still around to be caught that late in the process. And finally, number 5, ghosting. Have you ever needed a code review, asked or assigned it to someone only to be continually pushed back on when you need the results? The reviewer is too busy, needs a bigger block of open time as they don't have time to look at it properly or give it the time it deserves? Well, that's BS. If code reviews are to be an integral part of your development process, then they must be highly prioritized. Higher than doing your own work often, because successfully completing a code review unblocks 2 developers rather than just yourself. To help avoid ghosting, keep code reviews small, a couple of pages at most ideally. Throwing your fat code manifesto over the wall and expecting a quick answer isn't fair, but both teams and individuals must allocate enough time for code reviews. They must be seen as time well spent and not an intrusion or interruption. There you have it, the top 5 reasons to do a code review and the top 5 things to avoid while doing them. If you have any interest in matters related to ASD, Asperger's, or autism, or just want more stories from my Microsoft days, please stop by Amazon to check out my book, Secrets of the Autistic Millionaire, where you can read the sample chapter, Burgers with Bill Gates. The ebook's on sale for under $10, so please check it out. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember that I'm mostly in this for the subs and likes, so please be sure to leave me one of each before you go. In the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.
Do it, Glenn! Do it! Do it!
There are those who would denigrate the great traditions like the code review in order to stay home and stream Rick and Morty during their long compiles. Instead of the careful scrutiny of a skilled co-worker, they would have their code reviews performed by their 12-year-old daughter, who, granted, did find 3 bugs and you had to take her to Cold Stone to buy her silence, but nonetheless, I am here today to give you all the secret dirt on the professional virtues of the software code review.